Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today is the beginning of a new reading vlog, and I am very excited about this one because I will be reading Noelle Gallagher's favorite books. I've been watching her for quite a while now, and I am obsessed with her content. I think she's so much fun, she's so funny, and I love the way she talks about books. She's so passionate. So I wanted to give some of her favorites a read. So I tried to choose books that I think I will actually genuinely enjoy, but also kind of push me a little bit out of my comfort zone in terms of reading. I was going to read Misery by Stephen King for this, but I've already read it, so I figured I would just try to do some new books instead. So here are the books that I have chosen. I'm going to be reading The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This one is one that Noelle has talked about countless times and said made her cry, and she loves it so much. And it was really accessible in terms of the mythology. It wasn't so far out there that if you haven't read a bunch of mythology, you wouldn't understand it. And this definitely isn't within my kind of comfort zone for reading. I don't really read like fantasy or mythology based things often, so that should be fun and kind of push me out of my comfort zone a bit. The next one is actually a personalized recommendation. I asked her for a thriller recommendation, and she gave me Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. I read Gone Girl, and to be honest, I did like the movie better, but I've heard so many good things about Sharp Objects, and given it was a personal recommendation, I wanted to read it. And she has talked about this one a bunch, so I'll be reading this one too. Finally, I will be reading Writers and Lovers by Lily King. So this one has already been on my shelves. It was on my shelves before I decided to do this video, but I wanted to include it because it is Noelle's, or one of her favorite romances of all time, and it's one of her favorite books of all time. So I wanted to give it a read for the purposes of this video. Honestly, when I came up with this concept and wanted to start getting my TBR together for it, I was not loving romance. In fact, I had never really read a romance, but I just read Get a Life, Chloe Brown for a different video, and I loved it so much. So I think I could have gone with The Hating Game or something a little bit more romancy than Writers and Lovers, but because it's already on my TBR and because she loves it so much, I figured I would just stick with this one. So those are the books I will be reading in this vlog, and let's get into reading. Okay, I have actually already started Writers and Lovers, and I am only a few pages into it, but I want to say that I immediately fell in love with the writing style. I'm literally 7 pages into this, and the writing is exquisite. I love it so much. The way that she strings sentences together is just so beautiful, and I'm already connected with the characters. So I'm going to continue reading this, and I will update you when I have more to say about it. Okay, I am in the kitchen. I am cooking some lunch, but I have started Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, and so far I am really enjoying it. It is going to be thrilling. I can tell it's going to be probably a lot. My cat is going crazy. But Noelle did warn me that it is a lot, and I am prepared for that. I have a guess as to who could be committing the murders, but I think it is probably a red herring because it seems like the obvious solution. So we'll see if I'm right. I would be happy if I am wrong and there is a big twist. I'm sure there is. I do not doubt Gillian Flynn's ability to throw in quite a twist. After reading Gone Girl. Wow. But I'm going to continue cooking lunch, and I will update you when I have more to say about the book. Okay, so mild spoilers here, but I did want to talk about something. So the entire book takes place in this small town that the reporter, who is our main character, goes back to cover the story of these 2 murders. And she talks to a police officer who's investigating the whole situation, and they are talking about the history of violence in the town. And she talks about a young girl who was raped by a whole bunch of guys when she was drunk. And he's like, oh, that's obviously rape. And she's kind of like, is it? What's your definition of violence? And that to me was like so hard to hear, just because you have to realize that this woman, even though she's gotten out of this small town, she is still in, to a certain extent, that mindset of all the young women there have to like apologize for causing the boys to stumble or whatever if they are assaulted. So she's in that mindset, and she still has lingering attachments to that way of thinking, even though she has removed herself from the situation. but it was still really hard to hear and really upsetting. So this book is, while it is great and I am enjoying it, it is very upsetting on a multitude of layers. Okay, so I am outside enjoying the last of the sunshine, but I have finished Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. I read it all today, and I was completely enthralled in it. I did not want to stop. I sort of reconfigured my day around listening to the audiobook, so I got a lot more housework and all of that done than I originally anticipated, but that's fine. I am obsessed with that book. Oh my god. So it was gross and very thrilling, but not overwhelmingly so. Like, I read Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter recently, and it was just so disgusting and so mortifying that I just could not, in good conscience, give it a high rating because it disturbed me so much. This one was disturbing, but I felt like it worked, and it was not overly disturbing. It was just disturbing enough for the context of the thriller. So it made it very thrilling and exciting, and that I needed to continue reading it, but it wasn't so gross that I was like, oh my god, I can't handle this. So honestly, I think I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 because it had me hooked the entire time I was reading it. I read it all today, like I said, and I'm just obsessed with it. So Noelle, thank you for that wonderful recommendation. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, just because I read Gone Girl a while ago and I wasn't that impressed with it. I had fun reading it, but it wasn't like, oh my god, this is so great. But I'm thinking of reading Dark Places now because I am thoroughly impressed with Gillian Flynn now. So thank you so much, Noelle, for that wonderful recommendation. And I'm going to continue reading Writers and Lovers as I sit outside. Okay, so I am like 80 pages into Writers and Lovers, and I am still loving the language so much. It is so beautiful. I found so many quotes that I'm like, oh my god, I didn't realize anyone else was in my brain and could think the things I'm thinking or execute those things I'm thinking in such a beautiful way that I never could. So it is just absolutely stunning. I just finished a section where the main character, Casey's middle school best friend, was like, you need to come to my wedding and it's going to be $850 to get you there and I'm not paying for you. And I just want to say that I am extremely pissed at that friend because she's being a complete asshole for no reason, and I'm just not a fan of that. So I'm sitting here at work very angry at this one character. Okay, so I'm still at work, but I just wanted to say that where I'm at in the book, Casey is going out with 2 different guys kind of at the same time. And at this point, I don't know if it's going to become like a really convoluted love triangle situation, but I am not attached to either one of these guys, honestly. I'm still really attached to Luke and the old relationship, and that's probably supposed to be a past trauma, or maybe it's going to come back and it'll be fine. I don't know. But for some reason, I'm really attached to that character and that relationship. And I'm really not getting attached to either one of these new guys, so we'll see what happens. Okay, I am back from work. I look and feel like a complete disaster, but when I was at work today, I finished Writers and Lovers by Lily King. So I have a lot to say about this one. First of all, the writing was exquisite. I haven't read a book this beautifully written. I won't say in that long, because I have read some good ones recently, but it was so beautiful in a way that I just wasn't expecting. And it wasn't really about what I was expecting. I went into it thinking it was going to be more of a romance, and while there was romantic relationships discussed and happening on screen, quote unquote, it wasn't really a romance. It didn't feel like it was all about a relationship. It was mostly just about our main character, Casey, going through her life. And Because of that, I felt like it was incredibly realistic. Lily King puts in so many details, and it really makes it feel realistic because we get to see every aspect of her life. It's not just about this one aspect. It's not just about writing. It's not just about relationships. It's not just about grief. It's about everything. So we get everything from the minute details of her serving customers at the restaurant to these big ideas of, am I good enough of a writer? Am I infertile? Will I ever have a family? Will I ever find love? Will I ever be okay again? And there's a lot of discussion of anxiety. And it's just such a broad book in a lot of ways. It's really a focus on one character, so in that way it's very dialed in, but it's broad in terms of the scope of her entire life. So I hope that makes any semblance of sense. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. But honestly, this book was so beautiful. The one thing that I think I'm just kind of toxic for feeling this way, but the one thing that held it back from being a 5-star for me was just the fact that I couldn't get attached to either of the male characters that she was interested in. Because Oscar, he felt wrong all along. Oscar was a older guy. He was a father of 2 boys. And he had a death of his wife before the book takes place. That's not a spoiler. So I couldn't really get attached to him because something really felt off to me the whole time. And then the other character, Silas, he just was kind of flaky in the beginning, and I think I was just picking up on Casey's perspective, honestly, because throughout the book, and I won't tell you who gets picked or whatever, but throughout the book, Casey is kind of seeing both of them, and she can't decide who she wants to be with, or she even really likes either of them that much, and she's trying to deal with, you know, her past relationship with this guy named Luke. So the whole time I'm kind of thinking, like, I think she should get back with Luke because she's always thinking about him. And yes, it ended in kind of a weird way, but they had such a connection and they loved each other, seemingly, even though it was a very, like, short romance. And I think that's kind of not the best thing for her. I think that where she ended up is much better than where she started in the book. And with the person that she chose. But to me, I just couldn't get attached to either one of those male characters. And I still had this attachment to Luke. And I don't know if that was kind of a purposeful thing to kind of take the reader along with Casey's, feelings and opinions towards these men in her life. It probably was intentional. But I just couldn't connect with either one of the male characters, like, at all. Okay, I have returned from a very fun outing. I went out with my brother and my mom, and we went to a used bookshop, and we went to get these wonderful acai bowls that are just my absolute favorite. They're so delicious. And I wanted to share with you a couple of books that I found at the used bookshop. So I tend to prefer new bookstores with all new books and everything, just because I am, like, very pristine about the quality of my books and if they're perfect or not. But in the Noelle spirit, I went to a used bookstore, and the thing that I do love about used bookstores is that you never know what you're going to find. I think it's so fun to look through the shelves and find kind of obscure things or older things or things you just wouldn't typically see at, like, a Barnes & Noble or anything like that. So I found a couple things, and I just wanted to share them with you. So this first one is one that I actually probably would see at my local bookshop, and it is Rag by Maurice. I don't know how to say her name at all, but it is a short story collection, and the cover is super interesting. This was only $5, which was just amazing, and it sounds super interesting. I love a short story collection. It sounds super weird, so I'm hoping that I really enjoy this one. Then I also picked up Brooklyn, which was a movie. It's actually a movie that I absolutely love, and I didn't know it was originally a book. That is the cover. It is the movie cover version, and I really love this movie. It's with Saoirse Ronan, who I absolutely love, so I'm hoping I can read this soon. I didn't even know it was a book, so I love just being able to find things randomly and, like, oh, I didn't even realize that existed, so had to get that one. And then finally, I picked up a book that I had sort of been looking for but wasn't actively looking for, and that is The Witchcraft of Salem Village by Shirley Jackson. So I am trying to collect all of Shirley Jackson's books and all of the adjacent kind of works related to Shirley Jackson. And this is one that Penguin Classics doesn't have in their own edition. And I just have never been able to find it anywhere other than apparently this used bookshop. I actually already read this one in March, but I wanted to pick up a copy for my collection, and I was very excited to just randomly find it as I was looking on the shelves. So those are the books that I got, and this is my mini interstitial book haul in my vlog. So I'm gonna get back to reading The Song of Achilles. But speaking of Song of Achilles, I just wanted to give a quick update. I am at page 190 of this book, and I thought that I was not gonna get attached to this book or these characters because it's not something I typically read. But holy hell am I attached to these characters. Oh my god. So I've already read the Iliad and the Odyssey before, and I already kind of knew the trajectory of the Iliad and how it was going to end and what was going to happen. And I know that it's going to go that way because it is a retelling, but I so desperately want Achilles to survive this because I am so, at this point, attached to Achilles and Patroclus and their relationship, and it's just so much. I'm really not looking forward to their inevitable separation due to Achilles dying. So I'm already kind of emotional over this book. I really didn't think that was going to happen, but I'm already emotional. So I can sense that there is a cry in my future, and I'm kind of here for that at this point. It is the day after I finished The Song of Achilles. I finished it last night at work, which was probably not the best idea because I couldn't fully experience the cry. I only really had like tears kind of prickling in my eyes, but I couldn't fully cry because I was at the desk around patrons. But you should have seen in the last clip me just being like, what the fuck at the end. And that's kind of how I feel. I did not expect what happened to happen. I really did not. I expected part of it. I expected Achilles to go because I know that part of the myth, but apparently I didn't remember the myth fully because holy hell, I was not expecting the way it went. That's just me not knowing the myth very well. But regardless, this book was fantastic. Automatic 5 out of 5. I was not expecting to love it so much. Honestly, I went on barnesandnoble.com and ordered myself this book and Circe by Madeline Miller because this was a library copy and I just need to own it because it was just so incredible. The writing in this book felt to me like an epic or like an older kind of mythology story. It didn't feel like a modern writing style in a lot of ways. There definitely was some things that were hard to pronounce, but nothing that was really hard to understand. And I really appreciated that because it was easy enough to just kind of dive into this world and not have to focus on figuring out what was happening. Yet she still maintained that kind of epic or myth kind of writing style, which is just so incredible that she was able to balance those two very distinct purposes in writing this. So very impressed with the writing style. The only part of this book that the writing was kind of different from that was at the end. And I think that just has to do with the nature of the ending of this book, but it felt very detached and distant. And it works perfectly with what happens in the end, but it was just so distant in comparison to how kind of close Patroclus and Achilles were before and how close the writing style felt. So that was the only part that was different, but it wasn't a bad different. It was just kind of threw me off a little bit at the end, but I could understand why she did it that way, so it was fine. When I was thinking about the Iliad and the origin of this kind of myth, I was thinking more about the movie Troy from like 2003, and it goes very differently from what happens in this book. So I, for some reason, had kind of like put that together with the actual Iliad and made some kind of disjointed myth in my mind that wasn't the reality of what was happening. But I expected him to be going on the Trojan horse and to get shot in the heel and all of that stuff, and that just simply does not happen. So I was surprised by that, but I really liked the way it was handled, and I really appreciated it being less focused on the war and all of those things that we typically hear about with Achilles, and more focused on the relationship with Achilles and Patroclus. And I think really what it's about is seeing someone that you love and you know so well turn into someone unrecognizable. And it kind of brings up the question, do you stick it out with someone as they're going through all of these wild changes and aren't the person that you originally fell in love with? And that's what Patroclus does. He sticks with Achilles all the way to the end. But at some point, do you leave while you still have an image of this person as they were? So it brings up a lot of really deep questions that I was not expecting to get from this either. But that was the saddest part for me. But more than anybody dying was just Patroclus seeing Achilles slowly turn into someone that he doesn't recognize anymore. And I'm getting like teary-eyed thinking about it. But it's just so much. So this was absolutely a 5 out of 5. I am hoping to read Circe soon, and I have gone online and looked at so much fan art already of these two boys. I love them so much, so definitely highly recommend this if you haven't read it. I know that literally everyone has read it, and I'm really late to the party, but oh well. So just to wrap this whole video up, obviously I read The Song of Achilles. I also read Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, and I read Writers and Lovers by Lily King. So I think Noelle has impeccable taste in books. All of these were just amazing, and I was not expecting to love any of these so much because they all are kind of a little bit outside of my range of what I normally read. Not totally, but they're not reads that I would pick up on my own without someone recommending them to me. So this one I gave a 4 out of 5, and then these two I gave 5 out of 5s for each one. So overall, amazing reads. I had so much fun reading these and filming this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.